This episode of Planted is brought to you by Pax Labs.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Planted with Sara Pine. I'm Sara Pine, your host. And today, our guest is Aladdin, founder of Khalifa Genetics. The story of cannabis didn't start in a dispensary. It started in fields, mountains, and valleys across the world, where cannabis evolved alongside the people who cultivated it. Long before modern hybrids, there were landraces, regional varieties shaped by climate, geography, and generations of farmers. These plants are the genetic foundation of everything we know as cannabis today, but many of these original genetics are disappearing. Today, Aladdin, a breeder and preservationist dedicated to protecting traditional cannabis genetics from around the world, and I are going to talk about these landraces. Through years of travel, research, and collaboration with farmers in historic cannabis growing regions, Khalifa Genetics has become known for preserving and sharing authentic landrace heirloom varieties. His work focuses on protecting cannabis biodiversity and ensuring that the genetic foundations of the plant aren't lost in modern history as the industry continues to evolve. And his genetics are legendary. Aladdin, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm just so excited to geek out with you.
Hey, Sarah. How's it going?
Good, good. So for our listeners, for people who may not know you yet, who is Aladdin and how did Khalifa Genetics begin?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
And also wanted to thank James for making it happen too.
Yeah.
Last but not least, that introduction is absolutely perfect. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, let's get started.
Absolutely. So when did you start breeding? And how did you get the passion for it?
So like most breeders, I started growing before I started breeding.
Mm-hmm.
So I was growing long before. And the passion, it came from my grandma, actually. Yeah, I started growing strawberries, tomatoes, pretty much anything, with my grandma. When I was like 3 or 4, she taught me how to plant seeds, how to tend the garden. Yeah, everything. That's how I got the passion. She's not here anymore, but yeah, she taught me a lot. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, my grandma taught me about growing as well. I thought it was amazing to see her growing carrots and to be able to pull them out of the ground and like really knowing the difference between something that's grown with love and, like the difference between a tomato in your grandmother's garden and a tomato that you buy from the store. And it's really impactful, to see everything that goes into that.
100%.
So how did your personal relationship with cannabis start?
Pretty much when I was in, I would say high school. Yeah, high school. Because a lot of people were talking about it. And since I've always been into gardening, I've always been into plants, I've always been into biodiversity, rare plants. I would go to the Alps. I would visit the gardens there. They would, grow very rare and endangered species over there. So I have the passion for rare genetics already, not really cannabis, but plants in general. Mm-hmm. And when I started going to middle school, high school, actually, I heard a lot of people talking about cannabis, consuming cannabis as well. And since it came from a plant, I was like, wow, it's a plant. And it's it seems to be taboo. It's kind of trendy at the same time. I don't know. I've never seen that plant before, so I want to see it. I want to know what it grows like and, how, it looks and smells, everything. So then I started asking for seeds. I was not even a smoker yet, but I started asking for seeds because I really wanted to experience growing it first.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and for those of you listening, the first time that you walk into a grow, there's something incredibly magical about it. You can't even put into words. It's so much different than you appreciate the dried flower itself, but when you see it alive and just the aromas and everything, there's just something magnificent about that and the energy that you get from that. I know when I teach at healthcare institutions and universities about cannabis, and sometimes there's a lot of stigma. I was teaching for Chinese medical professionals, Chinese medicine professionals in continuing education. And there's a lot of stigma around cannabis there, even though it's part of their pharmacopoeia. So I brought in a bouquet of fresh flowers, put it on a vase, and put it on my desk. And that got everybody's wheels turning, and it totally changed their mind about, what this is. They're like, it's just a plant. And it's like, yeah, it's beautiful. Get in there, smell it, put your face in those flowers. And then we had a really great conversation. And I think that I always say conversation is normalization. So I think having people learn more about that is so incredibly important. And also having them be aware of the deep history of plants, because we have one of the oldest symbiotic relationships in cultivation with cannabis. We don't know if we found it or it found us. But as we've evolved, we're kind of, here in the States, we're kind of in the land of, there are a lot of very talented cultivators, but we kind of are in the land of salty mids where everything is like some sort of gelato cross or what have you. And when those first came out, I was curious about them. But now as we kind of are seeing like the widespread hybridization, there's a call to really preserve these interesting genetics that may have longer flowering cycles, may not have as high of yields, but are also, they're not the same old, and they're the basis of everything that we have. So what drew you to landrace genetics?
The diversity, 100%. The fact that each and every landrace is a totally unique and different experience. Like you said, there's a lot of modern hybrids made with gelato crosses and runs and, anything that's trendy right now, but it's pretty much the same. It looks very, very similar. Always a little bit of, color usually, and that very specific leaf structure, leaf shape, and bud structure. When you see the pics on Instagram, it's almost always the same. And they are beautiful, but they're always the same, right? And landraces are like the opposite of that. You get totally different things each and every time you try a new landrace. You don't know what to expect. The flavor profile is just, it can be anything, right? It can be salty. It can smell like Indian food. It can smell like cooked lamb. It's so diverse. It's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love the more savory ones. And actually, just 2 nights ago, I was talking to a breeder a cultivator whose father is a breeder. And he brought me some flowers that were they looked kind of like Thai stick. It was very skinny with tiny, tiny buds on either side. And when you look at it, for somebody who's used to what we normally see in dispensaries, you'd be like, what is that? But it was amazing. And it was one of those things where I think people have an idea aesthetically what it should look like, but they're missing out on a lot of magic if that's what they're thinking.
Yeah. And even still today, when you post amazing landrace pictures on social media, you're going to get a lot of people saying, man, I wouldn't even smoke that. It looks so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the armchair experts. So, when did seed preservation become a mission for you?
Actually, we started doing that before really breeding.
Mm-hmm.
Preserving landraces. At first, we only had a few landraces landrace seeds that we were selling, and we didn't have any worked variety yet. And yeah, we started that before because, you don't need years and years and years of stabilization to get that. You just need to keep the genetic diversity going, basically. Then you can do a few things. You can call out the herms to kind of increase sexual stability little by little, but still while keeping as much genetic diversity as possible, so you don't lose that precious thing, because there's so many expressions that can get lost. If you just focus on one thing you will lose a lot of different expressions forever. So
Yeah.
bottleneck, there's no way to get out of it.
Right. And that's, when we see what we're seeing now, which is the race to the top with THC, and we're forgetting about all those other cannabinoids that create the look and feel and the phenols and the terpenes and all of that. It's so much is lost with this mass hybridization. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently who was talking about Panama Red and how Panama Red in its earlier states was very much a CBD to THC ratio, and that's what gives it its feel. But how is a true landrace different from a stabilized hybrid or a modern cultivar?
Well, it's raw. It was developed by people, actually, farmers and people that tended their plot, but not in the same way. They would have a lot more plants. So there's still some, differences from one plant to the next, but you can tell it's one thing and not another one, right? For example, the Moroccan Bildia, which is one of my favorites. Well, you'll see a lot of different flower structures, but the smell is somewhat similar. All the plants have the ability to be semi-auto flowering, which means that they will start flowering usually in June and they'll finish in like August, July or August, super fast. They all have the same basic features, although they're different from one another. So it's not exactly like an IBL. It's got the diversity, but still, it's one specific type of cultivar, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And why do you think that modern consumers should care about this? Because I feel like one of the things that we're really missing as we've gotten into the mass commercialization is the education so that people really understand what they're getting, the value, and what that means to them.
Yeah. I think they're extremely precious for many reasons. There's still so many things we don't know about this wonderful plant. We discover new things every day. And there are things that we don't even know about today that we might really, really want 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And if we just breed with the same strains and cross the same modern hybrids together and lose those landraces, then there's going to be things that will be lost forever and we won't be able to go back. And there's many reasons. Another reason would be to breed with them, because even if they're not, for the most part, not very productive, well, you can outcross those to modern strains and you can make the modern strains even more productive, because you'll have the vigor coming from these plants, from these landraces, and you can also change the terp profiles and, add new things to the mix. And it's just fantastic. And there's many other reasons too, but those two main reasons, are the ones that come to my mind right now. But yeah.
I love that. Let's do a little shift into the global history of cannabis. So, as we were talking earlier, cannabis has evolved along human civilization. There's theories of like whether it kind of caught a ride with us somewhere and like, wherever we were, dumping our compost, it like started to grow and people got curious about it. And then, we were using it as food and medicine ritually. But what are some of the historic regions where these genetics have developed?
Well, mostly around the Himalayas, where they used the plant as a multi-purpose cultivar. So they would, like you said, they would use it for, feeding their family. They would use the seeds. They would make oil with the seeds too. The fibers, everything, So in these places, it's been there for so long. So they've developed different types of cultivars. And for example, in Southeast Asia also, in countries like Laos, they have multi-purpose cultivars, and they have cultivars that they just use for consuming, and others that they would use for the fiber or for the seeds or both,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people really understand. I mean, here in the States, we have there's this grocery store called Trader Joe's, and they actually have hemp hearts that they sell there. And so when I saw that when they started being available, I started buying bags of them, keeping in my freezer to have with my smoothies in the morning. And I am not a good grower. I do sometimes cultivate for myself, but I mostly do it for juicing the plant, because I don't think that what I grow is entirely smokable. I know a lot about cannabis, and cultivation is not one of my strong points.
Well, I didn't expect that because from what you said before, you seem to know your stuff pretty well.
Thank you. Knowing my stuff and putting it to practice is a whole different thing. And maybe it's because I just don't not as attentive as I should be. But I think everybody should at least grow a plant once in their life to really get the full experience.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking is, you have many, many friends that are amazing growers. So maybe that explains why too. Maybe just because you just don't have to.
Still smoking joints? Okay, we need to talk. If you love cannabis but you're still lighting it, let's look at what's actually happening. When you burn flower, you're creating smoke, and that smoke contains harmful compounds like tar, soot, benzene, and formaldehyde. In fact, almost 200 different compounds have been detected in joint smoke. So how do we know this? PAX decided to study it. In controlled lab testing, they compared joint smoke to vapor from their devices, using the same flower under the same conditions, and measured 16 key harmful compounds. The result is pretty striking. Vaporization reduced those compounds by more than 95%, because when you heat cannabis instead of burning it, you change what you inhale. You still get cannabinoids and flavor, just without all the extra stuff that comes from smoke. This isn't about judgment, it's about information. If you want to learn more, go to pax.com/science. PAX is setting higher standards so you can smoke less smoke. And for Planted listeners, get 20% off at pax.com with code PLANTED20. That's true. I don't. I have so many amazing grower friends that it really isn't. It's more of a curiosity for me, and I would have felt a little bit of shame if I hadn't at least tried. you know, but you've traveled and worked with farmers in traditional growing regions. What have those experiences been like?
I have not done it myself very, very much. I've done it a few times, but we're a team. It's a lot of networking involved. But yeah, I went to Morocco to collect the seeds myself back in 2017 or 2018. And yeah, it was fun. Going up the mountains and seeing a lot of stray dogs everywhere. I got a little scared, but it was fun too. And yeah, trying to speak with the people there was impossible to communicate, so it was like, yeah. And then, trying to just bond around that magical plant and, showing them a few things and trying to exchange a few words. Some speak Spanish over there, so we try to communicate that way. But yeah, it was fun. And yeah, so I try to get some samples from different locations because, as you probably know, it's already heavily contaminated. And even then, it was hard to find the original Bildia, very hard. So you have to go to remote areas. You have to go very high up in the mountains because that's where the typical local injury strain is the least affected by foreign pollen and modern genetics. So yeah, trying to get different samples from different locations. And then, fortunately, I was able to see the plants growing, so I had an idea. But then you have to grow them out yourself and see what you get and keep the ones that are the truest, purest expression.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting growing it where you are versus where you saw it being grown. Because here, in the Emerald Triangle, they're doing some farmers have been doing projects together where they're growing in their different environments and comparing the expression of the plant depending on the environment. So that has to be a fascinating experiment for you too.
Totally, because they don't really look the same depending on where and how you grow them. And even indoors versus outdoors is very, very different. It'll even smell different. It'll flower differently and have a different structure too. Yeah, depending on the humidity, the location, the soil, everything. But that being said, when you do a preservation run, even if the plants don't look exactly the same as where you've collected them, well, the genetics are still the same. They won't express themselves the same way, but the genetics are not going to drift like in just a few years. It takes hundreds of years. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like a true expression of nature versus nurture in many ways. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, how do local farmers, and I know that you've had some experience with the local farmers, how in these regions that you have visited or your team has visited, what do they think about cannabis compared to like the modern commercial market? What have you been able to get any feedback as far as that goes?
yeah, in many places, it's mostly the old timers that still grow the landraces because it's not very commercially interesting and doesn't really make sense compared to growing modern hybrids, modern varieties that you can sell for a lot more, that will yield a lot more, and with which you can make a lot more hash too, for those that make hash. So yeah, and there's only a small market still today. There's a small market for landraces and a big market for, weed with a very high bag appeal, the modern stuff. So
Yeah, I think
yeah, sometimes they do it just because it's a tradition. They're still going to be growing a little plot of landrace somewhere, but they're going to focus on the modern stuff, but they're still going to have their old thing somewhere, somewhere else. But yeah, it's getting really rare.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think as we get into maybe more sophisticated consumers and we get into premiumization, the yield, I hope that it's not as much of an issue, and bag appeal, because bag appeal is bullshit. It's like when I used to work in a dispensary, sometimes we get these amazing flowers that would have the effects and the aromas and everything, but they didn't quite look the way somebody expected them to. And I would have to explain to them, I'm like, listen, this is like a best kept secret because people aren't attracted to the look. She may not be the most beautiful to you, but if you try her and you smell her, she is going to blow you away. And then, they're like, it's like letting somebody in on a secret. So I feel like if we could get more into the mindset of premiumization for some of these flowers where you actually pay more for them because they're so outstanding.
Yeah, you have to be willing to pay more for it because it's going to take more time to flower. You're going to get less yield, and it's not going to maybe not store as well. If the flowers are very fluffy, it doesn't store as well, right? It can break a lot more easily. So yeah, for many, many reasons that people have to be willing to pay more for it. But usually when something is rare, when there's like a very special effect, like for example, with some tropical sativas that make you feel super energized, super pumped up, and make the lights appear brighter and the colors more vivid, people might be willing to pay more for that very special experience, right? But because a lot of people still don't know what it feels like and what it tastes like, they're not just not willing to do it, right? So education is key, and having people try new things, and little by little, as the market matures, like you said, I think there's hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are your thoughts on longer cures, vintage cures? Because I know there are growers that are like, I don't believe in it. Others that are like, I don't cure at all. I just dry. I don't do any of that. Everyone has their own, view. But one of the things that I've heard from some breeders and cultivators that work with land races is that some of these cultivars actually do really well with a long cure, and they actually get better with time.
That is a very, very good question. And yes, it totally depends on the variety. Sometimes the terpenes are mostly volatile, so it's much, much better when it's fresh. And sometimes it just cures in a way that makes it taste even better and be even more potent for some sativas. So yeah, it totally depends on the strain.
Yeah, I just find that really exciting. Like every time I have a farmer who has something that's like, older than a year, and they're like, you have to try this. It's like, it opens your mind because it smells so different than when they first pulled it down.
And landraces, not all, but most tend to do very, very well when they are cured for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about a trip that really changed your perspective on cannabis.
Probably. Are you talking about going to like third world countries or places where they still grow landraces, or other countries where they consume cannabis and it's like just a different country?
It can be anything, just like what really hit you, what was really impactful.
Well, actually going to California and seeing how normal it was over there, that was very impactful to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing like people, just taking a little break after work and smoking a joint, but like wearing like beautiful shirts and being like all dressed up, ready to go to work and ready to go back to the office and just smoking a little joint, taking a break. And it was like totally normal. And in Europe, you would not see that, especially like 10 years ago. I was like, wow, this is cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Finally.
I totally hear that. It was like, when I first came to California, it was still like where most of the United States, there was a lot of stigma. And I lived in the Hague. And I remember walking down the street and smelling it in the air and being like, okay, back home, you had to stick a towel under the door and make sure that nobody could see in your windows. And it's a really like, it's a different thing when you're not used to it.
Yeah. When you're not used to it and all of a sudden you go to a place where it's normal and not stigmatized anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hope, because it wasn't that way in California either a long time ago. It's like,
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. Um, what do you think are some of the most important landrace regions in the world? Because there's all these places that it comes from, whether we're looking at like, Asia, the Middle East, South America, Africa. Like, where do you find the most impact?
most important is kind of tricky, but it all came, according to most experts, it all came from Central Asia, around China, Mongolia, places like that. So it is a very important location, especially if we can find old buds and old pieces of hash from a long, long time ago, and, maybe analyze those and see and try to like figure out what people were smoking thousands of years ago or consuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, speaking of landraces, now I would say everything is important because, they've evolved differently depending on the location, depending on the selection also. So yeah, and unfortunately in places like Jamaica, it's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And there's many places where it's pretty much totally gone now. So
Yeah. And when you look at the history of like how they got to those places, it's a really interesting like a travel, like where Jamaica got their genetics and how that was done. And that's something that the more I learn about that, it's just the sharing of the genetics is such an impactful thing. Like, just not too long ago, I was talking to Mountain Girl, and she was married to Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead, and she talked about how musicians would come and see her in the late 60s, early 70s as they're passing through town, and would have seeds from, weed that they'd had and collecting them, and like how that, changed the way we looked at cannabis here in California. And also the conversation around just because you have the seeds doesn't mean that they'll necessarily thrive in these environments. Like, just like when we look at like going back to just cultivation in general, in California, we have a lot of grapes and we have the cash crop grapes, but then we have the grapes that actually thrive in these environments, and how there are cultivators that are starting to look at that.
yeah, that's super fun because back in the 60s, I'm sure they were experimenting with so many different strains, so many different cultivars, and most of them would not even finish, but then they would just keep the ones that do finish. And, there are variations within one specific cultivar as well. So some can be earlier flowering than others. Some can be a little bit more mold resistant, and they would work with those and they would just select the best ones for their location. And this is really awesome. And there's like so many strains that came from that era.
Yeah, yeah. I always get excited when I see those. Like, when I worked in a dispensary, when we would get really like older genetics, or even even just different ways of like, we would see like a lot of bubble hash coming in. And then when I get a pressed hash in or a temple ball, I would get really excited. And I would know that there'd be a certain person, usually, but not always male, of a certain age, that when I pulled those out, there would be a twinkle in his eye because it would bring back a lot of memories. Like, they're the same dudes that would come in and be like, hey, do you have any Thai stick? I'm like, that is not happening. I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah, I feel you. Because we have certain customers that are probably 50 and over, maybe 60 and over, and they're trying to recreate that. They just order landraces because they're trying to recreate that experience. So it's really fun, yeah.
Do you think it's possible to recreate that experience for people, or do you think that we're past that?
I think it's possible to get close to it.
Yeah.
It would be way closer than just trying to make hash with some modern gelato.
Yeah.
If you've tasted the hash from the Afghanistan back in the 70s and you're trying to grow some Afghan landrace to make some Afghan hash, you will not get the same thing exactly, but you can get very close to it.
Yeah. When I was in Copenhagen this year, I hooked up with Smokenhagen, and I got to look at some very beautiful Moroccan hash, and that was something that, because of importing everything, we don't really see that much in the States, and if we do, it's very precious and few and far between. But it was it took my breath away. It was just so gorgeous.
Yeah, and even the hash that's made with more modern varieties in Morocco, or varieties that are like partially landrace and partially modern hybrid, well, they're still going to have that Moroccan flavor because it's also the soil, the growing methods, everything, how it's processed. So it's still going to have that Moroccan vibe to it, right? So
yeah, it's just like here with like Chardonnay grapes compared to France. Like we have to over oak everything to make it be, like those old vines, and in that soil. It's like I think that we need to look at how to do things, not only using these genetics, but also creating honoring where it's being grown, and the fact that creates a different nuance to it, which is instead of looking at the mass hybridization. And I think as human beings, especially when we get into large scale industrial approaches, that's they're looking at more about cutting costs and cutting corners and actually creating something that, creates true blue fans.
Yeah, that's capitalism. The product is becoming legal, but it's very highly taxed, and there's so many players. So you're trying to compete, and you have to feed your family. So you have to find the most productive ones. You have to find the best methods to get the most out of it. So yeah, it's understandable, but you lose a lot of things in the process.
Yeah. What are you seeing in the European market, what people are interested in? I know I found a lot of California weed when I was in Europe, which, that was interesting, but I really wanted to try what was grown there. So what are you seeing as far as consumers and what they're interested in, and what you're seeing out there with people trying?
So I think it's very country specific, very specific. American strains are quite trendy in Europe for the most part, but in some places they also like different things. So for example, in Germany, now it's it's legal, it's a new market. Well, there are breeders there now, and people sell seeds, and yeah, I've noticed that hazes are quite popular, old school hazes, and they like landraces a lot more than elsewhere in Europe as well. In countries like Spain or France, people are more into the modern American hybrids, but in places like Germany, there's a lot of people that like old school stuff too. In Eastern Europe, because of the climate, they're really into autos.
I can see that.
So, yeah,
they're more stable.
Ruderalis basically come from Eastern Europe and Russia, so yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, keeping it down home. I totally hear that. Yeah. I know, like in the UK, I would see a lot of press around the fear of skunk, and it used to make me laugh because I was like, what are you talking about? It's just a cultivar. It's not like this super drug that's going to like kill you and your family.
In the UK, they still like the old school skunk and the cheese and all that. They like American hybrids a lot, but they still like the old school local, skunk cheese, and they're still into it. There's still a market for it, even.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it fascinating how regionally people are drawn to things. Like in the New York market for years, it was all about sour diesel. And then when people would come over before they had a commercial market, they come to California and I'd be like, well, you're going to get a break from the sour D. That was like when Girl Scout cookies was big. And I was like, you get to try some cookies. What do you think about this? And they're like, whoa, something totally different. Um,
Yeah.
you know?
And I'm sure there's still a market for OG in California.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was just talking to a physician. He's an intensive care physician who's gotten into cannabis, and he's actually taking classes to, really get into like more of the critiquing of it and learning more about cannabinoids. And he was saying that in areas of the United States where we have issues with the opiate crisis, OGs are actually incredibly popular because of the myrcene, which helps them, get some of the same effects as they would have from opiates. So when they're making the change from the unhealthy choices with opiate addiction, from a harm reduction standpoint, the OGs are really helpful for making that transition. And I found that fascinating. So I think like depending on, where you are and what people are dealing with, they're going to be just like, as human beings, we're constantly striving for homeostasis. So whether we know it or not, we're drawn to certain flowers for certain reasons.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. And that could maybe explain why some African strains are very high in THCV, which can suppress appetite, because if they don't have enough food and they're starving, maybe that can help make things a little bit better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And THCV is such a creative cannabinoid too. I love it for like focus and working on projects and things like that. Like having things like Durban poison and stuff like that. It's like I had a woman who came in who was from Durban. I had a jar of Durban poison. She's like, "Can I just smell it?" And I opened it up, and whether it's for real or not, she was like, she just put her face in that jar and she's like, "This smells like home to me." And that was like the best.
Yeah, a friend of mine from Germany grew the Durban from my buddy Ryan, who's from South Africa originally, and he got the seeds from like an old friend of his father. His father's friend had some flowers, very old flowers, seeded flowers, and he was able to sprout some, and now he's got some Durban seeds. So my friend from Germany, well, he grew them out, and then he gave us a little bit. When we were there in Germany, we were at Dusseldorf Canna Fair. I think it's called Canna Fair, yeah. And he brought some flowers to us, and it was so wispy, just like you described before, the super wispy and like extremely fluffy buds. And people would look at it and be like, what? What is that? And it would smell like tea, mostly kind of like tea, and a little bit fruity and spicy, but very complex. And yeah, very interesting.
I love that. I get so excited when I see wispy buds. I'm like, all right, I want to know more about this. I've got to try this. And, looking at like preserving biodiversity and the legacy of these strains, what role do seed banks play in protecting cannabis biodiversity?
Well, it's really, really hard to preserve like many, many strains. For just one bank to preserve all the strains is just impossible, right? There are so many. But maybe we can all focus on a few that we like, that we vibe with. Because if you're just doing it with a few seeds, then you're going to create a genetic bottleneck. And if you do that for a few generations, then it's pretty much lost. You've just made a new IBL, pretty much. It's not a cultivar anymore, right? So yeah, maybe banks could just focus on a few pure landraces that they like, and we could all like maybe preserve different ones. And yeah, and get also people to get involved too, people that really like that. So just maybe get one landrace strain and work with it in the garden year after year, maintaining the diversity, doing open pollinations with many males and females. So yeah. And a lot of people say that, if you're not growing it in the same location, is going to change, is going to be completely different. But, well, that mostly comes down to the selections you make, because genes do not change that fast. It's very slow.
Yeah. Well, and I was looking at your website. I was looking at your genetics, and you were mentioning that you had a lot of F1 cuts. For people who don't understand what that is, would you explain that?
Yeah. So we have true F1s, which is a strain, a variety that's made with two very distinct IBLs, two different IBLs. And when you combine two IBLs, two inbred lines that are very, very different genetically from one another, then you get hybrid vigor, true hybrid vigor. So you're going to get plants that will be extremely productive, that will grow very, very fast. And sometimes you can combine the flavor coming from both parents, or sometimes you'll get something totally different, or maybe there's going to be a dominant one. But it's super interesting. It's cool. And we usually do it with modern strains and landraces, so we can get good bag appeal still. We can get, the flowering time to be a little bit reduced as well, and easier to grow, but still with the flavors, the like rare terps from the landraces, and the very special effects as well.
I love that. I love that. Let's talk about your genetics. How do you decide, after you've collected all these land races and rare genetics, how do you decide where to go with your creations? And I also just kind of want to talk about like some of the individual genetics that you carry as well. So if you just go for it. I'm so excited to hear more about this.
So we do not decide in advance usually. We decide when we do preservation runs. When you work with a landrace cultivar and you see all the diversity being expressed, then, sometimes we'll find something that's totally outstanding that we really like, and we will try to stabilize that. For example, we've done that with the Afghan lemon, which came from the bulk landrace that we've preserved. It's just one specific phenotype of the bulk, and it was extremely lemony. It was very BLD-like, meaning very broad leaves and very, very bushy and squat, and yeah, super strong stems and incredible terps, lemony and hashy at the same time. It's like old school hash with lemon, like fresh lemon. And so, yeah, we wanted to stabilize that one, and we've done it, over the course of a few years. And now that we have that IBL, we offer it on our website as an IBL variety that people can either directly grow and enjoy, or work with for breeding, for making new true F1s themselves, because it's a breeding tool. IBLs are great breeding tools. And we've also used it ourselves for making the Limon Blanco, for example, and other strains too, other true F1s.
Awesome. Tell me about some of your other strains that you're particularly proud of. I really want to, for our listeners who are interested in cultivation, you really need to check out their website and see these beautiful genetics. But I would love to hear more about them from you.
Okay, thank you for the shout out first. Thank you. And there's one that came to mind directly. It's the new Frosty's Auto Freak. because of all the different mutations that we had to combine and all the recessive traits. We've started working years ago with a berry freak, which was pretty terpy, pretty good, that a friend of mine had worked on already to make it terpier. We outcrossed it with a modern American hybrid that we really liked, and that was very black, purple, black, very dark, and very, very flavorful too. And then we tried to recombine all those good traits. So we wanted the mutation, of course. We wanted the fern-looking leaves. We wanted, and we also wanted the color from the American hybrid, from the Black Kush. We wanted the good terps actually from both parents because they both had very interesting flavors. And after creating that, Frosty's Purple Freak, which is really awesome, well, then I wanted to make it auto-flowering too, So then we started working with one of James's best autos, Guavalato auto, and but we focused on the rotten meat phenos. So it's very fruity, but some phenos have a little bit of fruit and a little bit of rotten meat at the same time. It's very old school, so we liked it a lot. And we tried to combine the great berry, candy, cushy terps from the Frosty's Purple Freak with the fruity, rotten meat terps from the Guavalato Auto, and then make it auto-flowering. So auto-flowering, great terps, purple, like it's super hard to get that because it's a numbers game and it's highly recessive. The mutation is highly recessive, and then to make it auto-flowering is also recessive. So it's like, like I think it's 6.25%, times like 0.25% just to get the auto freaks is like 1%, 1.5, 1.75, just to get the auto flowering freaks. And then to get them to have great terpenes, well, then it's even a lower number to get them to be also purple and very colorful, to have a good aspect as well, good bag appeal, good resin content. Wow. It's crazy, but it's so cool. It's so fun to grow. Like outdoors, indoors is great.
Well, with the aromas from those parents, what does the plant smell like?
Well, it smells like mostly rotten meat and berry, rotten meat and fruit. So yeah, it smells amazing. And we've done we've lab tested it for the terps. And it's a very rare terp profile. So people can look it up on the website because we've posted the results on it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so clone versus seed for your home grower. What do you say?
So I would say always start with seeds, always, so that you can have your own stuff. You can have your own personal cut, and that works best for you according to your needs and according to what you like. And then why not keep a mother and work with the clones after, especially if you're a commercial grower, 100% go with clones, but do your own selection so you can have your own very unique strain that you can offer, because if everybody were growing the same clones, it would not be fun. And well, it's pretty much the case. Not everybody, but you find pretty much the same things in most places.
Yeah. No, that's true. Favorite land races. What are some of the ones that you love to smoke, and what are some of the ones that you love to geek out on?
Yeah, so I'm part Moroccan, so I'm biased.
I understand.
Baldia, for sure. The Moroccan Baldia. I love because of its ability to be semi-auto flowering, which is very weird. It's not a ruderalis variety at all, but it has adapted to the very harsh growing conditions over there because the summer is super hot. It doesn't rain at all almost in the summer. So plants had to adapt to that by flowering super early while the soil is still moist, and by reproducing, making seeds before it gets too dry. I just love that, adaptation, natural adaptation, and also the flavor. It's not the most potent and it's not the most productive at all, but I really like the sweet honey, spicy flavor, and it's unlike any other strain.
And I think too, potency isn't the end all be all because for some of us who, I enjoy cannabis during the day and I don't want something that's going to like knock my socks off while I'm trying to write or like talk to you, because otherwise I'm going to be like a deer caught in the headlights. Like that's the more potent stuff is for like when I want to kick back at the end of the day with like a movie or friends and just kind of like, BS or whatever. So I think we need to have more conversations about the time and place for certain cultivars. Like I used to have a bag that had all these little grams of different flowers and people would be like, what do you have that for? I'm like, this is for sleep. This is for creativity. This is for when I have a headache. It varies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when it's not too potent, then you get to smoke more of it and enjoy the flavor.
Yeah.
When it's super potent and you don't want to get too high, then okay, I'm just going to take 2 puffs. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I brought some flowers to a friend's party last night and she was like taking a little hit. She'd come back. She's like, this is like having a cocktail. Like I'm not too high and I can have another hit when I feel like it. And I'm being totally social. It's wonderful. So
yeah, and speaking of that, THC is like so overrated. Like even if you're looking for something that would really like knock you out, like something super powerful, well, even then THC is just not the end all be all, and it's just one small ingredient, and there are many others that you have to take into account. So it mostly comes down to what it makes you feel like when you smoke it and how potent you think it is, because THC does not equate potency.
no, it doesn't. And I think that that's one of the shortcuts that commercialization has really brought to light because they don't feel like they have the time to look at the plant as a whole, but it's a huge disservice. When you're at home, what is one of the ones that you like to smoke the most?
Moroccan India is great for daytime.
Yeah.
Very, very good because it's, it helps you focus. It helps you, it's not super energizing like, for example, a Kerala strain would be, but it helps you focus and it puts you in a good mood for like working out, focusing, reading, being productive. And it doesn't last long, so then you can smoke again if you need to. Or if you don't, an hour later, you're totally fine. So yeah, I like it. And before going to bed, I like the Afghan, the Afghan strains.
That's classic.
And they don't really knock you out as much as most hybrid strains, but they help you relax mostly. It's a different type of effect. It helps you sleep and relax. It doesn't just knock you out, right?
Yeah.
I like
Yeah. Well, and as a Persian girl, I am partial to the Afghans. You know what I mean? Do you think that land races will become more important as the industry evolves?
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
I think it gradually has. Not dramatically, it's not super fast, but there are more people now looking for lane races than 5 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more people that know about them.
Yeah.
Whereas 10 years ago, very few people knew what it was.
What do you think what do you think breeders should know about the value of these for people who are either starting out or have kind of gotten hung up on gelato and Skittles and things like that? What wisdom would you give them for them about, really understanding the value?
Okay. So it's harder to work with them because you're going to have to sort through many more plants to find good phenols. However, what you'll find will be your own. It'll be totally different. And if you really want to make a dent, then go with landraces. Because if you just work with the same cultivars that most breeders work with, then you're not going to be any different. And yeah, you might make money and sell seeds, but you'll not be unique and remembered.
Yeah, differentiation is key. I mean, especially as everything is starting to look the same. It's like, how will you have people coming back to you and working with you? They'll just move on to the next person after they try something with you. It's like you have to have something to capture their imagination.
Yeah, and what's very funny is that sometimes breeders that order our seeds to create new strains, they ask us, they tell us, oh, can we work with this one? And can we cross this one with that one? Because you guys have already done something similar. And I'm like, nah, it's impossible to do the same thing because they are so diverse and your selections will make the end result totally different. So go for it. It'll never be the same. And it's great because that way we'll come up with different things.
Yeah. Well, having those conversations with you must inspire a lot of creativity for these breeders, which is, I think, yeah, that's part of it, right? It's like, there's competition with things, but there's also that. I just find that the people who really love the plant, there's this spirit of collaboration, healthy competition, but also like that competition drives us to be more creative and learn more. And like you said earlier, we're always learning new things about the plant, which I think for some of us, I know for me, is what always keeps me engaged, because once I feel like I know everything about something, I kind of lose interest. But we're always learning and we're always being proven wrong.
Yeah, and what fascinates me about this plant is its ability to adapt to so many different conditions and environments and be so different. Like I don't think there's any other plant that can do that can be so diverse.
Yeah,
The fact that it's always a different experience is just what I love about it the most.
I always say that the term weed is very apt because a weed can grow anywhere, and cannabis can do too. But how it grows is another thing altogether, depending on, its environment. So if somebody wanted to begin exploring landrace cannabis, where would you suggest they start?
Okay, great question again. I would say go with the beginner-friendly ones, meaning the Afghans, the Afghanicas, the Lebanese, the Moroccan ones are great too. So yeah, go with those. Don't start with a super slow flowering tropical sativa. Not for the first time. You might be, it's a little daunting at first when you're not used to it, when the stretch is just crazy and there's no way to keep, for example, to keep the size manageable. If you have a small grow tent, you can get overwhelmed pretty quickly, and then it never ends. It can flower for sometimes half a year. So start with the Afghanicas, start with the hash plants, Middle Eastern hash plants, Lebanese, Moroccan, Syrian, and yeah, Afghans as well are great.
That's awesome. And what excites you the most about the future of cannabis genetics?
Maybe the fact that we're going to slowly get out of that prohibition, and that, like you said before, more and more people are going to be looking for rare and unique experiences, and people are going to be just looking for what they personally like versus what is trendy.
I love that. And what are you hopeful about in the future?
Well, I think cannabis is like apolitical and it brings people together. And if you're into landraces, well, then you like people and you like different cultures and you like to study and hear about different methods and practices. So it makes you open-minded automatically. And I really like that. And hopefully this will help more people be more open-minded as well, I guess.
I love that. Yeah, opening hearts and minds. For people who want to follow you online, purchase your seeds, or see you at different events, how do they do that?
Okay, so they can check out the website, khalifagenetics.com, and they can come see us at Canna Fair Dusseldorf and maybe Prague next year. I'm not sure yet, but we'll try to have a booth there as well.
Awesome. Aladdin, it's been a pleasure talking with you and so much fun geeking out. You have so much knowledge. I want to try some of your favorite Moroccan strains. So I hope to see you very soon in the next year or so. And please come back anytime. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on. And you're a great interviewer. You're very relaxed. So you put people at ease. I really like it.
Thank you so much.
And the questions.
Thank you. Well, I love our work. I love what we do. And I love talking to interesting people like you who are doing great work. So thank you. And thank you for taking the time because I know you're super busy.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on once again.
Absolutely. Thank you. You too. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.